You guys want to set up your station so that you have a mixer, a paddle attachment, a rubber spatula, and you want to make sure you have a pot that is like an appropriate size for the amount of ingredients that you have. If you were working on a full recipe, you might want to get the medium-sized pot. This is a half recipe, so I'm just using a small one. So, first thing I'm gonna do is, well, first let's talk about your liquids. We talked about the eggs, how you might not be adding all of the eggs. It depends on the amount of moisture that you're gonna be cooking out. But your water and your milk, you can do, so I have 4 ounces of each. You could do 8 ounces of all water, or you could do 8 ounces of all milk. Right now I have 4 and 4. They serve different purposes in the choux. So if you wanted a shell that was a little bit harder, then and like a little bit more of like a crunch, you would use all 8 ounces of water. If you wanted them to be a little bit softer and a little bit more moist, you would want to use 8 ounces of milk. I like to use half and half because I kind of like what both of them blend together. The water gives a little bit of a hardness, but not so hard that it's like a super crunch. But I don't like to use all milk because I don't like how soft it is. So I like to use half and half, like 4 ounces milk, 4 ounces water, not half and half, because half and half isn't actually half and half. It's 60-40, so.
But 4 ounces by volume or weight?
Weight.
Okay.
Yep. I'm pretty sure everything on here was weight.
Yes.
Good.
Weight.
Yeah?
Wait.
Wait. Okay, so first we're going your liquids, your butter, and salt.
What's that about?
And we're gonna bring this to a boil. Well, not quite a boil. It's gonna be like just right above a simmer. I call it a smoil, halfway between a simmer and a boil. The reason you don't want to bring it to a full boil is because you're cooking off moisture. You don't want to cook moisture off at that point. So just get into that habit. It's going to be the same thing when you move into ganaches and cakes. If it says bring it to a simmer, it means a simmer, not a boil. And that's because if you bring it to a boil, then you're cooking off too much of the moisture, and then your formula is not going to be the correct ratio. All right, so I'm going to bring this all the way. I have it up on high. This is gonna come right up to a simmer, and my eggs are gonna be added when I go on the mixer. So I'm just gonna move them over there. And we're working with bread flour. We're using the bread flour. Why do you think? What do you know about bread flour? Protein. So I want that higher protein content because I want it to have enough strength that it can support itself in the oven. So because this is leavened with steam, I want it to be able to expand nicely and hold its structure while it's cooking. If you were to use cake flour or bread flour, it would have a softer texture, and it wouldn't quite have that chew that you want in the back of your mouth when you're eating an eclair. Okay, so then my flour is gonna get mixed in after this comes up. So benefits of using the either all water or all milk. It depends on what you're doing with your eclairs. So if you were planning on baking these today, keeping them in the refrigerator overnight and then filling them tomorrow with the pastry cream and then leaving them in a bakery case. A bakery case is refrigerated, so what's inside the bakery case? Moisture. So what is moisture gonna do to your shells? Soften them. So if you're gonna be leaving them in your pastry case for a couple days, you might wanna use all water in your recipe because it's going to get softer as it sits in the fridge. Okay, so I'm right up to about a schmoil. I just wanna make sure my butter is melted down. So I'm just gonna stir it a little bit just to get that butter melted. Okay, so I am up. I'm gonna dump my bread flour in, and you wanna use your rubber spatula at this point because I'm gonna mix my flour. My heat is off right now. So I'm dumping my flour in, all of the flour. And I want to just slowly stir this to let the starches start to absorb the liquid. And it's gonna start to look like mashed potatoes. This is a really gentle process.
It kind of looks like a roux.
Grab the stool.
It smells like mashed potatoes.
Yeah, it does. I feel you, man.
Tanya, we're the same height.
Sure.
Why are you adding the egg in with the mixer?
Because I want it to fully incorporate. So some chefs use a wooden spoon when they add their eggs. So notice that I had a couple little flour clumps in there. As I was stirring, they kind of busted up. So I want to make sure that's why I'm using my rubber spatula, so I can get in there. Now that my proteins and my starch is absorbed, I can get in there and kind of mash it around and bust up those lumps of flour. It's less work for me using a mixer.
When I do it, I usually add the eggs in with it.
Yeah, depending on where you were trained, some chefs you like add one egg at a time with a wooden spoon. But sometimes you might add one egg too many. Sometimes you need like a part of an egg, but not the whole thing. So I prefer to whisk it to make it one big mixture. And then I use a mixer just because I think it makes a more homogeneous mixture. But you can do it by hand, totally. That's the old school Julia Child way. All right, so I'm gonna pass this around so everyone can see. Take a whiff of it so that you guys are familiar with what it smells like. Tatiana said it smells like mashed potatoes. Okay, so see how it's like kind of smooth? Well, it looks like mashed potatoes, it smells like mashed potatoes. And that's the water, milk, flour, salt.
My kids sing that at work every time I get mad. This is
Kind of jelly.
Yeah, because of the bread flour. So Emma's question was, does it matter what temperature your eggs are? It does. It's kind of the same thing as creaming. If you're adding cold eggs to your warm mixture, it's going to shock the mixture. So room temperature, everything. Your butter doesn't need to be room temperature. If you only have cold, use cold. That part doesn't matter because you're bringing it to a boil.
But the milk and the water should be room temperature.
It's always best to have room temperature, but the important part is the eggs. And I'm going to show you guys why. So now that I'm absorbed, everything is mixed together, my flour lumps are broken up, I'm going to roast this. So high heat and rubber spatula, I'm just moving the dough around, and this is what's going to form that thin film that's on the bottom of the pot. So if you read your formula, it'll say thin film. So you should be able to hear it starting to sizzle on the bottom, and I'm not scraping the bottom of the pan with my spatula, I'm just moving the dough around the top. You want to hear it? Talks to you. It's like baguettes when they come out of the oven.
Sounds like Rice Krispies.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of looking at it.
So mix until you snap, crackle, pop.
Snap, crackle, pop.
Oh my god, I know she's
So all of this is cooking the moisture off, and this will allow me to add more eggs
some
to my
fun.
mixture.
I tried to.
Just have some fun.
It's not being fun.
The more eggs you add, the more hollow your eclair is going to be, and the more filling you can add.
I didn't do this when I did my shoe cakes. So they were hollow, but it wasn't like hollow.
It was a little bit like they weren't as puffy, and they were probably a little moist inside.
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm nice and roasted, so I'm going to pass the pot around so that you guys can see what the bottom looks like. Okay? Thin film. This is quite a muscle.
It looks like you're eating milk or something.
Yeah.
All right, thin film, and you can hear it.
Like when you make caramel, it gets like burnt mashed potatoes. Or burnt mashed potatoes.
Okay, so now I'm dumping this whole thing right into the mixer.
Even the thin film.
Done. All right. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do is let this mix a little bit on, like between first and second speed, just to let off some steam. because if I were to add my eggs right away, it's gonna cook. So I just wanna let off a little bit of steam. I whisk my eggs all together so that I can add it like a tablespoon at a time. Adding one whole egg sometimes is a little bit too much, so I like to whisk. I don't know when it's enough. I'm gonna show you what it looks like. So if you feel the bottom of the bowl right now, it's super hot. So again, you have to start getting used to temperatures. Best way to feel a temperature is your forearm. I know that this is too hot to put my forearm on it. Your forearm is way more sensitive than your hands. Your hands have a lot of layers of skin that are super tough. Your forearm is super sensitive. So I'm feeling the bottom with my hand because I know it's not gonna burn my hand, just to get a feel. And then throughout the rest of the process, I'll be using my forearm.
What's the maximum of eggs you would have?
The max, it depends on how much moisture you cook out. So, I mean, I have seen recipes where you add maybe an additional egg, but it all depends on what your mixture looks like. So the reason you don't want to add cold eggs is, are you recording?
Yes.
Okay. Is you want to add your eggs while your mixture is warm so that it can absorb. So if you're adding cold eggs straight from the fridge to a hot mixture, it's going to shock the mixture, and then it's going to bring the temperature down drastically. And then your temperature isn't going to be able to absorb as many eggs as it should. Okay, so this is one of those things where you have to add your eggs like slowly so they can coagulate in it, but like don't take your sweet ass time because then it's going to be too cold, and then your eggs are going to just be sloshing around. Okay, so I'm gonna add, my general rule is you guys are gonna add half of your eggs and then call me over to check it your first couple times making it. That way you can get used to the assessment of it. And then you'll be able to know, should you add more, less. But general rule, when you first start, add half, then call me over. Not half all at once, in a couple additions. So I do a splash at a time. I add a splash, I let it mix in, and then I add another splash. And I'm constantly monitoring my temperature to make sure I'm not getting too cold.
What would you do if it was too cold?
Pipe it.
Oh,
That way I know the rate at which I should be adding it.
Wait, what was the question?
What would I do if it got too cold?
Oh, okay.
And what did you say?
Pipe it.
What does that mean?
You're done. You gotta work with it.
Okay.
But by monitoring my temperature, I know how quickly I can add my eggs. Am I starting to get, on the cooler side? That way you can kind of do some time management, yeah. But you are gonna have eggs stick to the side of the bowl. So after you add your additions, once you get to about halfway done, you need to scrape down the side of your bowl.
Why does it kind of look like yellow bread dough?
Because of the eggs. Alright, so scrape it down.
The steam from the eggs makes it puffy.
You got it. So it is leavened naturally.
What happens if you don't put enough eggs?
They're going to be a little bit flatter. So they're not going to get like a jump, we call it, in the oven.
Did the amount of eggs affect the taste of it?
Yes. We will talk about that after they bake.
Okay.
How long do they bake for?
About a half hour. Our ovens are very unpredictable and unreliable. So the way that it bakes in my home oven is very different than the way they bake here. If it's having a hard time mixing in, jack up your speed a little.
Chef, if you bake them at home and you have a convection oven, will it affect it not having enough steam?
The steam is coming from the dough, not from the oven.
Okay, so it's not like how we used to do the bread?
Right, you don't need a deck oven. You can bake in a convection just fine.
Okay.
But you have to lower the temperature a little bit.